Hey, welcome back. You're at the Ask Dr. Be Good show, the show where we talk about the politics, the pedagogy, and the practice around public education. Why do we do that? Well, because public education has never been so important as it is now. I started this show before COVID reared its ugly head, and I thought public education and the need to get information to you all was important before COVID, but now the urgency is driving me even further into making sure that the news we bring you helps you understand the part that you need to play in helping us not only make you an informed parent, informed educator, but also an informed voter, because all of this is going to play out in the politics of public education. Before I go much further, let's welcome our guest. I'm going to turn on our guest, Judge John Payton. He has been on before with us, but we find him a pretty interesting fellow. You want to say hello, John?
Hello, John.
And the reason why we like to have John Payton on is because, first of all, he's probably the premier truancy expert in the state of Texas. He worked very hard to gain that title as an active truancy judge, and then after he retired, he has brought a process to schools that is helping parents figure out why attendance is impacting their home. And oftentimes, he is able to help schools, help the families to fix that. But before we get started with him, I want to bring a couple of articles that I found from yesterday. And I thought they were very timely. And Judge Payton, feel free to weigh in. But the first one was that the CDC has come out with new guidelines. Now, these guidelines, and this was yesterday, I'm not reading old news.
Well,
and
with the CDC, it was old news 6 months ago, probably.
But what they're saying is that they have levels of risk for districts across the country. And according to at least one early analysis of the CDC guidance, nearly 90% of people in the U.S. live in counties that fall into the two highest risk categories for reopening schools. Good news. The release of this guidance, which recommends aggressive thresholds, reignited a wave of criticism over the lack of federal guidance and left many wondering how many schools would have not reopened had they had this a little bit earlier. Because really, this came out yesterday. Many schools opened, like mine did. Mine opened even sort of late compared to some other districts, and that is August 24th. And so this news is, we're in our fourth week of school, and this came out yesterday. So it is a little bit frustrating that we should be finding these things out, or the way to measure the safety of a county from yesterday, right? When we're in our fourth week of school. The CDC recommends 3 indicators, including 2 measures of community burden, the number of new cases per 100,000 persons within the last 14 days, and the percentage of tests that are positive during the last 14 days, which, does anybody find something odd about that? The last 14 days, we've been open for 4 weeks.
Right.
Okay, so does that mean we should assess every week? Now that we're in school, we should assess the last 14 days? It's just mind-boggling how to do this. And then the other measure is how well one assesses the measure of schools' ability to adhere to the various mitigating strategies. So, and they make a good point there, because I will tell you that already I'm hearing of districts around us that they're not practicing social distancing, they're not having their kids wear masks, and they're having a regular schedule. And that's a little worrisome to me. Right now, I had to do something wild and crazy and get rid of all my tables that we have been using for group work the last several years, because we're a collaborative district where we want our kids to learn how to collaborate together in preparation for the workplace. And I had to go buy almost 400 old-timey desks and replace my modern tables with desks so that we could fit more kids in the classrooms, i.e. 12 instead of 8, and still have enough personnel to cover those classes for the 1/3 of kids coming back. So John, did you understand? And I'm not hearing people and districts scream about this, unless they're a district that just is not obeying social distancing. Only a third, John, of my kids are coming back face-to-face next week. We can only have the kinder through 8th grade, and with about 12 kids per classroom, and then I'm out of personnel. When somebody calls an absence, I may have to go cover it. What do you think about that?
Well, I can tell you this, that number one, I'm watching districts now put advertisements on their websites for substitutes. Mm-hmm. It's like all of a sudden being a substitute teacher has become a prime job opportunity because the personnel is falling off. People are not going back to teach in the classroom, number one. Number two, you have a lot of students that are not coming back, and you've stretched and stressed your teacher pool because you can't afford to keep hiring new teachers to fill up more classrooms that don't exist under the roof of the school building. The CDC guidelines. First of all, I find it very interesting what the CDC comes out with anyways. I look at Sweden as an example. Sweden had a surge in April. That surge went away. Their mortality rate is an average of 2 people per day for COVID-19, which is far less than a lot of other countries across the world. Kids have been going to school, no masks. People have been going to the grocery store, getting on buses, going to restaurants with no masks. The government recommends social distancing, wash your hands, which again, if you were raised right, you should be washing your hands anyways. And so these new CDC guidelines, one, I question the science behind it, to be honest with you. Here we have all these schools that have been opening up. I think, didn't your granddaughter go back to school?
She went early August.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, so she's been in school now, what, 7 weeks?
Something
probably?
like that, yes.
6 weeks? And the CDC is now, I mean, COVID-19 has been around at least since January, let's say. We shut schools down at spring break. The CDC has had all summer to know, okay, schools are going to go back into session, but how are they going to go back? It's been a political hot potato that the president has kicked around, the Speaker of the House has kicked around, Dr. Fauci has kicked around, scientists have geared in with the conversation. And it's, where are we at, September 16th?
17th,
17th? And we just now released these new guidelines? Why?
And here's this, when I read this, what is this going to make you think? Recommendations are based on the CDC's current knowledge of COVID-19, the guidance states. Each community should decide the most appropriate indicators to reference when deciding to open, close, or reopen schools. What did they just do?
Yeah, I mean...
They just put it back in the hands of the schools.
Well, sure they did, because they didn't want to take any responsibility.
No, that's right.
They want to take no responsibility for any decision that is made in regards to COVID-19 and schools reopening, because they don't want anybody to come back and say, well, you told us, no, we recommended it, but you need to fall back on what your local wants you to do. Okay.
Which is what we're doing anyway.
And, well, that's exactly right. And what is it that they have discovered new about COVID-19? I mean, help me out here. I mean, nothing has changed on the guidelines of the rest of the world and how we operate. Wear a mask, stay 6 feet apart, wash your hands, use your toilet paper. Oh, yeah, I forgot. The toilet paper revolution of 2020. I mean, it's like, hello, seriously? And so, I don't know. I think that the CDC's guidelines that come out now, sometimes 7 weeks after schools have already gone back into school, is not timely, number one. Two, I don't see the science behind it or backing it up. There are school districts, I've only read of a couple of them in Texas, where they've had to shut down campuses. But for the most part, everybody seems to be back. People are not shutting down campus. I haven't heard of a rash of teachers. You know, Wiley ISD has been open since middle of August, late August. They had one teacher with COVID-19, one student.
Okay.
And kids have been going back to school. And so, again, I've only heard of Keller that has struggled, and a middle school at a community ISD that struggled. So,
well, and I'll just give you, because I love data, and I love sometimes the way data is used. So in this article, according to early analysis from Ashish Jha, director of the Harvard Global Health Institute, I mean, that's supposed to sound, and one of the country's leading public health experts says 20 states fall into the highest risk category, 28 states fall into a higher risk category, and only 2 states fall into the moderate risk and 1 in the low risk. What would that be? Alaska, maybe? I don't know.
Well,
I
mean,
don't know.
yeah, we're talking about Greenland.
You know.
I think we're talking about Greenland.
So Ja also analyzed the data at the county level, finding that 56% of counties fall into the highest risk and 31% into the higher risk. So everybody's either red or orange, right? Overall, he says 40% of people live in counties considered the highest risk, and only 11 and 1% respectively live in counties considered moderate and low. So that is supposed to scare us. And yet, and you know, that's supposed to scare us. And yet again, your point is we've got schools that have been open as long as 7 weeks.
Right. So I guess, you know, Dr. Good, I guess I would argue 2 things. One is, do you take your children out into public? Do you take them to the grocery store with you? Do you take them to a restaurant? Do you take them to a recreational swimming pool? Do you take them to a rec center to play basketball? And you can't tell me, I love the parent that's going to sit there and watch this and go, well, Judge Peyton, we don't. Well, you may have, but I see a lot of people that are, and that are out and about. And so how safe are our grocery stores and our restaurants for our children to be out at? I would argue that school is going to be set up much safer, and take into consideration the guidelines that have been given a long time ago to promote health amongst your kids. That's number 1. My number 2 argument is, can you truly prevent your child from getting COVID-19 in the current state that you are with that child working remotely? And I just don't see it. There's no guarantees in life. I can't walk out the door, not fall down the step, snap my neck, and not die. I mean, it's accidents happen, things happen, life happens.
Here's the irony. We've had 1 COVID case at Legacy. It wasn't at school. It was a remote student who had never been to our school.
Yeah.
That's our 1 kid. We didn't have to report him, by the way. But we've had 1 case of a child. We had a teacher and a TA. But again, they were remote workers. They got it not from school. And so let me end this article with something that you can know really tugged at me, and it almost negated everything in the article. So this famous health expert, Dr. Ja, said that red counties will struggle no matter what they do. It's a reminder that we had all spring and summer to get our schools ready, and we largely didn't. Oh.
Yeah, that is fingernails on a chalkboard.
Do you know how hard we've been working? Do you know we started this year exhausted from preparing our schools? Oh, in my free time, I'm going to write him. Luckily, probably I won't get free time because I'm not going to be very happy with my response to him. See, those are those pot shots that they take at public education that are totally unfair, and we've got to call them on the carpet for that. That is so wrong to end an article like that with a pot shot.
You know, and here's my reflection, Dr. Good. My reflection is that teachers go into teaching because they love the idea of helping and teaching kids and being a part of families and being a part of schools and a part of the community. And to say that a school would act in such a disregard for a student's welfare when these people don't make, I mean, we're talking, some of them have master's degrees, doctorates making $50,000 a year, while we have high school graduates getting on a floor or court at the NBA making $3, $4, $5, $6 million a year. You don't go into teaching to get rich. You go into teaching because you love what you're doing and you love kids. And so to say that a school or a teacher or a principal or superintendent or anybody in the field of education would put a student or parent in harm's way, to me, is reckless. And at that point, it's almost like what you say. Anything you say before the word but doesn't count.
Exactly.
Everything that was said before you said that doesn't count.
You're right. And so, we're talking about people's money and how much they make now. My next interesting news article that I have has to do with the fact that U.S. News and World Report is reporting that because our kids are not learning as quickly as they should, that it may impact our economy up to $14 trillion, that it would have that future impact. And so let's delve into a little bit about that, because that's putting my show's whole agenda has to do with preparing our public education army, and we need our parents, our educators, to be ready to contact their legislators about not cutting public education. By the way, I was on a Chamber of Commerce meeting yesterday, and Senator Angela Paxton and Republican Representative Leach were both on there, and they promised that they're not going to cut Pub Ed. Now, I guess it's easy to say that in September when, the session is still, 4 months away.
Right.
But they're already feeling some heat from some of their constituents like me. I'm one of their constituents, and I'm emailing them about reminders on the importance of keeping public education monies from being cut. So it says here that K-12 students will experience a 3% lower income over their lifetime because of loss of learning, according to existing research. So I'm always fascinated by who is able to come up with that, right? The loss of academic learning due to schools closing to stem the spread of the virus could cost the U.S. economy $14 to $28 trillion if they remain closed for in-person learning much longer, according to a new report from economists that evaluates the long-term economic ramifications of remote learning. The school-wide school closures in 2020 led to losses in learning that will not easily be made up, even if schools quickly return to their prior performance levels, writes. And I love these names that we know that it must be important and that their work is important if they have a name like Eric Hanushek, a senior fellow at the Hoover Institute of Stanford University, and Ludger Wossman, professor at the University of Munich. These losses will have a lasting economic impact both on affected students and on each nation unless they're effectively remediated. And so that's my first thing when I read that was, how do they know? We've never had. First of all, if anybody had been able to predict that public schools could have reacted as quickly as they did to go to remote learning, nobody would have predicted that we could have done that, right? They had really chalked off public ed as an archaic dinosaur. And in some ways we were, right? We had settled in, we had adults that didn't really want to change that easily, we had very 21st century technology. But COVID sort of shook us up and made us advance faster than we wanted to. And so we've learned something about ourselves as public educators that we have something to be proud of, right? Because we did and pulled off what we were able to pull off. I'm not saying that the COVID slide is not real and that the loss of learning is not real. But what I'm saying is, first of all, nobody could have predicted public education's quick turnaround to get kids online. And we did it. And now they're predicting that if we don't get kids back in school by a certain amount of time, that there's going to be all this loss in learning because they think we can't get them back up to speed. Based on what? Based on what other phenomena? John, do we have any other phenomena that we can base this on where kids haven't been in school for 5 months?
I think that the closest you can get would be the Spanish flu in 1918. And I don't even think kids, and that was only really in a small areas that shut down. It wasn't like a countrywide or a nationwide shutdown. I cannot think of any time when we have ever, as a nation, been shut down by a virus. And I'm talking about shut down. Businesses closed. The ability to leave your home. You're told not to leave your home. Remote learning kicks off at a spring break where you've got 5 days to figure out how to get every student learning for the next 2 or 3 months how to do graduation. So, I think, these guys to me sound like all they were doing was writing for what we used to call squirrel killers in the debate world. You could go out and spend $50 and you get like 100 pages of all these little boxes of evidence that you could cut, and you could say things like, in 86, Washman and Wozeman said, and that's what it sounds like. It sounds like it's a soundbite for a debate topic soon to come in the high school and college realm. To be able to say that we're going to have a drop-off of 3% learning, how do they know that? What's the measuring stick? I'm trying to think worldwide. Has anybody been shut down for 5 months where everything shut down, their GDP was hit, the education that didn't happen during that time came back and impacted employment rates, impacted GDP, impacted entrepreneurship? I don't see it. I think that we're a much smarter group of people, and that educators really created and I'm going to use the COVID-19 term, pivoted very quickly, and then spent the summer getting ready to really treat schooling as school, whether you're at home or at school. And I think the Commissioner of Education gets a tip of the hat on that deal, because he's pushing schools and saying, hey, look, you're going to have to still be prepared for standardized testing, and we want you taking attendance every period, every day, and we want you teaching as if you were K through 12. And because we've already got online high schools, and they've already done this, and it's difficult. I can tell you that when I was in court, I'd have a student go to an online high school, and only about 3% would successfully stay in it, because they found out, this is like going to school I got to teach myself almost. I don't want to do this. Well, right, it's hard. That's why you go to school and you're in your seat for your in-classroom instruction, and you have that teacher available to you. So I think that article 1 is probably outdated. Maybe it's for the spring, even though I know it was written recently.
Yesterday.
Right. I mean, it seems like it's talking about what happened in the spring, because I think the schools are much better prepared for the fall.
Well, they go on, and this is economic losses for countries, so it's not even counties, it's countries. They're making everybody feel the pain. And again, I'm picking up on a pattern here of how they're ending their articles, the News Report. Just returning to schools where they were in 2019 will not avoid such losses, they wrote, only making them better can. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah, I mean, what are they setting up? The IMF to give loans to schools now directly?
So dire. Yeah. I prefer articles and journal pieces that maybe give strategies and interventions that can be put into place to say, okay, districts, if you don't do, here's some things that you can do to mitigate the possibility of our kids not learning as much and impacting their lifelong earnings, right? But this, based on 5-6 months of what's happened, they are predicting a really very dire future for the world economy.
What I've got a real problem with is the fact that there are so many different models throughout the world, right? I don't know if you remember back in the late 80s, early 90s, the Japanese had a very direct learning system, and they used a grading system based on that individual's ability, and they called it ability grouping education. Do you remember ability grouping education?
Yeah.
So Japan did that, right?
Yep.
So then you've got the European model. The European model really starts to separate out college-bound, trade-bound.
Yeah, the tracks.
At like 8th grade.
Mm-hmm.
In Germany, you're required to learn 3 languages. And so my curiosity is that, is there really less learning going on when you look at a European model where they've already said, hey, you know what? We think you're going to be a great plumber or a great carpenter. We think you're going to be a good doctor and a good lawyer or a good linguist. So you go the college route, you go the trade school route. I find that because when kids come out of high school in Europe, they go straight into their desired field. It's not, let's do 2 years of math, science, social studies, arts, liberal arts. They don't. If you want to go into hotel management, you go to a college that does hotel management. You want to be a doctor, you go straight into a school that teaches you how to become a doctor. And you cover things like biology and chemistry and organic chemistry and physics. So I can't understand how they can even say that this is going to impact countries across the world when every country seems to have a different model to educate their kids. You can't apply the apples to apples and oranges to oranges.
Well, all I will be doing is looking for some happier news as the schools get better at being able to, and actually it's convince parents to not only let their kids come back to school, but then let them do things like go to tutorials, go to Saturday school, because we do have parents who, not so much, I mean, we do have some that still don't want their kids to stay till 4:30 on Tuesdays and Thursdays, for example, for tutoring. They don't want their kid to come on Saturday, even if it's once a month, because they have in their heads that, oh, my child deserves their rest. You know, there's plenty of time to rest during the holidays, which, by the way, should be much shorter. We all know that year-round school is the best thing for kids, but parents sort of, even if they start in one, they hijack the school that started it and make them go back because the parents feel like kids should have a summer off, when in fact, all the research says that it causes a summer slide. And now we have this huge COVID slide. So our work would be to convince parents to let us have their kids more so that we can work with them more, catch them up, and not have this dire future awaiting them, right?
And when we look at this, we have to ask ourselves, is the coronavirus really as devastating as the government has made it out to be? Or did we go through a huge overreaction in how we're treating all of this? Because there's arguments and evidence on both sides that say that the government has really overstepped and overreacted to the coronavirus.
I think we're about 10 years away from being able to know the answer to that, because hindsight's always 2020. So since we're in a good transition break, let me go ahead and break for station identification. We're at the Ask Dr. Be Good show, and we're on the JP, Kathy, and the Crew Network. And let me give a plug to JP, Kathy, and the Crew, because I got my start with them back on the radio years ago, followed them to another radio station, and now have followed them to their new JP, Kathy, and the Crew Network, where they already are filling up their slots with neat and exciting shows, and allowing me to be part of that. And I can't thank them enough. And so if you have a show that is unique and you can fill content weekly, they'd love to talk to you. There's still some slots left. And so you can email JP, Kathy, and the Crew 3@gmail.com, or go to their Facebook page. All right. Thank you, John. Now, one of the things that I had you on for today was to talk about your experience that you've had the last almost 2 months in talking to districts around, in this case, the state of Texas. I don't know if you've gone outside of Texas yet. I'm sure this expertise that you have will be needed in other states because truancy is truancy, right? But talk a little bit first about what you're seeing with enrollment, and then we'll go to the attendance.
So, enrollment is not markedly down across the board. I've spoken with a couple of schools in Arizona, a couple of them in Florida, and then several schools here in Texas that we've spoken to. Enrollment is seems to be anywhere down between 1% and about 8%. Enrollment is down. A lot of parents had shifted over to private school because private schools opened up and they weren't bound by the government. Those private schools could make those determinations on what they were going to do. And so a lot of private schools went back to school. And so there were some parents that shifted there. Some parents that shifted to homeschool because they were afraid that the coronavirus could infect them, or if they had several family members in their household that had immune system
Immune system issues.
And so Enrollment, I'm telling you, enrollment is down. I would say that anything over 5% would be significant and could impact the community. And so I find that interesting. I am finding where you have 33% of your students wanting to come back to your public school. I've talked to other public schools, and their numbers are about 60%. I even had some parents in the Collin County area that attend a large district in Collin County say that they weren't going to do remote learning. That when you open the building back up, you call us. That's when our first day of school is. And so I had those parents on the other side where they weren't going to do remote learning. Our kids aren't learning anything remotely. When you open up the doors on September the 8th, we'll see you then. Otherwise, we're not coming back. And so that could be a enrollment issue later on. Let's say, for example, like a DISD that waits till October the 8th, and parents are like, we're not doing remote learning, we're going to homeschool. Well, that hits your enrollment numbers. And so we've talked to districts where that's been the impact. But some of the smaller districts and larger districts, their commentary is, hey, we've got 60% of our students back on campus, and only 40% are doing remote learning. Godly ISD is one of them. They opened up like they were going to open up normally. They're playing football. They're playing volleyball. By the time before school started, they'd already had their first volleyball game at Godly ISD. And no COVID, I haven't heard a single COVID issue come out of Godly ISD.
Are they not in a hotspot area, though? Because that's pretty much,
Well, it's Johnson, Tarrant County.
Okay.
So because they split between Johnson and Tarrant County, and, Fort Worth's numbers have been going down. They're not directly in Fort Worth. A lot of the families work in Fort Worth. And, and again, I would argue, we talked about this earlier, but I would argue that a person is going to be more likely to bring COVID-19 home from work than a child would be to picking it up at school. Hence, your public school only had one student with COVID-19, and that was a remote learner. Never even set their foot on a campus. And so enrollment is down, it seems like. Again, not terribly bad across the board. Some schools higher than others, but a small percentage of that. And then, as far as attendance is concerned, I'm seeing that, again, 60% are wanting their kids back on campus.
So how are the schools fitting them? Do you know if they're using social distancing as part of their COVID safety practices?
So they are. And what they've done is they've taken apparatuses out that would put a student close. Now, why do I say apparatuses? Let me use Godly ISD, for example. They've got a really nice open-aired area where students can come in and sit and entertain. They've got a cafe where they've got booths. They've got the beanbag type chairs. That's why I call them apparatuses. They removed some of those apparatuses to create more open space and less mingling space, I guess, and wear your masks. Of course, I think part of the confusion as well is that if you wear a mask, then you save somebody else's life, right? Okay, so if you're wearing a mask, you're good. Then why do I have to socially distance if I'm wearing a mask? And if I'm socially distanced, then why do I have to wear a mask? Because supposedly I can't cause you any issues if I'm 6 feet apart from you. And again, that's where the unexact, and I don't even know if that's a word, the unexact science comes into it. And I think why a lot of parents decided to not re-enroll their students and withdraw them and do something else. I know that at a couple public schools in the Dallas County area, I had gotten word that we're not going back to school. We don't trust the CDC guidelines. It's not that we don't trust the school. We don't know we don't know that they know what they're talking about. And so we're going to wait, and we're just going to see how things go.
I don't think that article we talked about earlier is helping that decision, do you?
Not at all.
But it came out in U.S. World Report,
Yeah, well, they also came out of the top 100 colleges and liberal arts colleges, too, and I don't know that I believe they're 1 through 100. I don't know if that's someone who buys more advertising or what.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Well, I don't understand how some of our bigger districts are bringing everybody back. Now, are you seeing some districts not bringing their high school back so that they can fit their pre-K through 8th kids?
So let's use the example of Wiley and Godly. Wiley didn't. Wiley brought everybody back. Godly brought everybody back. Middle school, elementary school, and high school. Plano has phased in everybody back, even the academy, the school that is for students who do project-based learning and have a different type of style of education, right? You apply, you have to get in, not everybody gets to do it. Even they have gone back to school. And so I've not seen this grade level phasing in as much as I have maybe in some private schools and in large districts like DISD, Fort Worth ISD. I think Arlington is also phasing in by grade level as well. I don't know that it's a bad idea. If nothing else, it can create some trust with staff and students. And then you can use that as a tool to say, okay, look, we followed the guidelines, we're strong, teachers don't have COVID-19, parents and students are not bringing COVID-19, come on back to school.
Well, and that's, you've heard me say this several times, that it's a trust issue. It's a trust issue between the parents and the school. And once the school is able to win back the trust of the parent, especially the timid parent, there are lots of parents who can very quickly see that this online learning instruction is just not working for their child. But there are others who, they see it working okay, and they just don't want to put their kids in any type of germ danger, and so they're not going to do it. And so I think, again, giving credit to the school districts where we're offering both the online, which we've never done before, right, except for those that were, I think, only one district in Texas had permission from the Texas Education Agency to be a virtual school. So it just wasn't done. And then at the same time, and that's something maybe we'll talk about next week on the show, is what does it look like when you have teachers who are having to teach both in the classroom and their remote learners at the same time? That's a whole different ballgame that we'll talk about next week. But so you have slight enrollment down. I know on our part, we're frantically calling those, we call them los desaparecidos, the disappeared ones, and because we're frantic to get them back. But we have the urgency, and we know that COVID slide is real, that we need to get them back and get them learning, whether, let's start with remote instruction if we can't get them into the classroom, because they have to have something, right? And then, but at the same time, we're also capitalizing on those districts who are not very good at having engaging virtual school. And so over Labor Day weekend, we got 30 applications from districts around us with very dissatisfied parents. So that was sort of an interesting side effect of all this. But what are you seeing now in attendance? Because I will tell you that, as I've tried to explain to our parents and our teachers, attendance has always been a bit of a bugaboo for our teachers, right? You have to prod them and remind them. It doesn't matter how long they've been teaching. They just don't remember that they have to take attendance before 10 o'clock in the morning, right? Or whatever time the school decided. A lot of schools decided 9 a.m. back in the old days, right? When we, 9 a.m. But the state says it has to be before 10 a.m. Well, that sort of still applies, doesn't it?
It does. What I find interesting, I remember when I was at Plano East, we had some teachers that would hand a student the attendance slip and say, take attendance, and just put it on the wall over there. Would never even look at the attendance slip again. And so, I mean, we had a piece of paper that went back to the attendance clerks. I mean, nowadays, teachers can take everything on the computer and submit their attendance. They've got their, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Bitt, but I even think that the grade books now are electronic.
Oh, yeah. Oh, goodness, yes. Oh, they've been electronic forever.
For a long time.
We haven't sent report cards home by paper 5 years.
Yeah. And so electronic grade books now, electronic attendance. What I'm finding, and this is across the board, how on earth do we take attendance for asynchronous, synchronous? What does all that mean?
Yes.
I mean, I'm serious. I'm getting on a regular basis when I say, are you doing asynchronous or synchronous attendance?
Or face-to-face.
Or face-to-face, right.
Now that they're back.
So, and I talked to a school in Denton County here about a week ago, and they're doing all asynchronous, no synchronous, no face-to-face. They'll start face-to-face phasing in, if I'm not mistaken, next week, I think there is their plan. And it was funny. They said, well, we'll meet with you when the kids all come back to campus, because we know they're all going to come back to campus at some point, and because we really don't know how we're going to take attendance.
No, wait.
No, don't tell me that. That's terrible. You're an ISD. You're a big public school in Denton County, and you're going, well, I don't know. We're doing this asynchronous thing, but we really haven't mastered how to take attendance yet. Well, you've got the kindness of the state that said, okay, look, we're not going to ding you financially for your attendance until, I think, September the 25th. But after that, we're dinging you. We're going to hold you accountable for your attendance, but not financially. We're going to give you 30 days to kind of settle in, get everything going. But after that, we are. So it's going to be, ADA, average daily attendance, is going to be tied back into the purse strings and the finances of schools. And if you don't have everybody on campus and you're still doing asynchronous remote learning and you can't master attendance, oh, Lord, I feel bad for you.
So here's, for those parents, for those educators who haven't had the pleasure yet of knowing what's ahead, here's what we're asking our teachers to do now. So I am teacher A, and today is Tuesday morning. I had class yesterday, I had remote learning yesterday, and I counted, let's say 80% of my kids, I could count them present because I saw them, I interacted with them, they handed something in. Those are the three big ones, right? If you interact with the learning platform, moving your instruction forward as a student, if you interact with a teacher, and if you hand something in, a completed work assignment that's not late, then you get to be counted present until 11:59.
That's correct.
Now, the teacher's not awake until 11:59.
Right.
And so what we are having to train teachers to do is to understand that capture as many of the attendance kids as you can because you saw them, they turned something in, and you saw that they interacted with the learning platform. And then the next day, Tuesday morning, I get to go back to yesterday, early before my classes start. I have an attendance period where I have to go back and count and see what happened after 4:30 or 5 o'clock when I finally said, okay, I've had enough. I'm going to sign off so that I can go eat the dinner my husband made for me. I can help my kids with their homework, have my private life, right? So I'm going to turn it off. Well, there was some activity after you turned that off, after I turned that off at 4:30, 5 o'clock, if I'm lucky, right? And I tell myself I'm not going to turn it back on until the next day because I'm trying to have a private life. Then the action that happened between that 4:30 time when I shut down and 11:59 needs to go back and be counted. So out of that 20% that I didn't count present because they didn't show up, interact, or hand something in, if they did any of the other two things, if they interacted with the learning platform and moved their instruction forward or handed something in that was due that day, I've got to go back and change the attendance from absent to present. So I've just added a burden, an additional burden, an additional attendance burden to the teacher that they never had before. And that was just remote learning, folks. Those are different codes, right, John?
Yes, that's correct. And if I may, Dr. Good, for any parents that are listening right now, you want to get on your parent portal and you want to look at your child's attendance and help your teacher out. Because it may be that your child turned something in at 10:50 p.m. and the teacher missed it and didn't go back and change the attendance from the day prior. But they're doing so much right now. We are asking so much of them. Be kind. Help them out. Send them a little note. Hey, I saw you marked my son absent for yesterday. We turned in our assignment last night at 10:50 p.m. Here's a copy of the screenshot. Just wanted to give you a heads up. Something as simple as that would be so helpful for a teacher to be able to make sure that the attendance is right and taken properly. So if you're a parent watching, help out, help your school, be a part of your school community.
Be a positive part, by the way. Please, please, please. Your teachers are exhausted, and it's only their 4th, 5th, 8th week of school. And the other thing now is, as teachers come back to face, that we've added another code. So they have to grade their asynchronous, synchronous kids remotely with a certain code, and then the face-to-face kids get a different code. And so attendance has never been more complicated than it is now. And so please, please ensure, by working positively with the teacher and the campus principal, the student information person at the campus, to make sure that your documentation is strong enough to easily be able to change that attendance. And guess what? The school really wants to count your child as present, because they get money for every day your child is in school, is counted present at school. And so all you have to do is give them a really good reason that falls under the guidelines of the state. And Judge Payton just gave you some great ways of getting evidence, and which we need to document, Judge. We need to put that in a document for our parents. And then, make sure and help the school get a good attendance rate so that they can get the money they deserve for the resources. Because guess what, folks? Times are tough ahead. And as you've heard me talk, the economy has been tough. Taxes are down. Sales taxes are down. And so municipalities are looking to cut things. The federal government is looking to cut things. The state government is looking to cut. And so let's make sure that as far as our schools are concerned, they're able to count every kid present that should be counted present. Okay, so from a parent standpoint, educator standpoint, let's make a deal that that's what we want for our schools. So let me take a station identification real quick. We are the Ask Dr. Be Good show. We run at 8 o'clock every Sunday morning with a rebroadcast at 5. And we are here to take your questions and to help you understand the public education world that is so quickly moving in today's world. But if you need a little bit of a break from something else, we have on Thursdays at noon, you can turn into Everything Criminal Law with Jeremy Rosenthal from 12 to 1. That's a nice change of pace, and yet something that, again, is needed for us to know more about how society functions, right? And having somebody help us understand law can only help us. All right, so John, you have been with us during this show to bring what's happening in the field and so forth. I have an article that is actually a year old, but when I read the title, I applied it directly to this year, and that is that parent burnout can lead to harmful outcomes for parents and child. That title alone is important, parent burnout. And I'm sure that you saw parent burnout in the courts and before COVID, right? All those years that you saw. So what strategies would you suggest for parents to really work at trying to, can you avoid parent burnout, or maybe can you get strategies? What do you advise to our parents who are working so hard, being teachers at home, working possibly at home? What do you advise them?
So I'll take you back to an old 1980s commercial, and my mother used to say it, especially when my sister and I were ankle biters and always talking, and the commercial would come on, Calgon, take me away.
Yeah, I remember that.
And so you have to find what your Calgon is, right? And for those of you who are too young to remember that, it was basically a bath salt / bath bubble type of thing you would add to a nice hot bath, and somebody would kick back in their bath and relax and take an hour to themselves and close the door so that they could kind of decompress. And as parents, that's all you really get. I mean, first and foremost, I need you to understand as a parent, having these kids, whether you wanted them or not, they are a lot of work, a lot of work, and they require a lot of your attention, and that's what makes them successful. What makes them successful is the fact that you don't stop and you don't get to stop. So you find those Calgon moments. That's what I'm going to call them. Is it a hot bath with the door closed after they go to bed and you decompress for an hour? Is it where you find time for date night and you get a babysitter to come in and you go out and you have date night? And it may be just date night by yourself. Because sometimes after you've had laundry, dinner, tires flat, insurance is due, house payments due, sometimes just going out to a quiet dinner by yourself or a quiet walk in a park by yourself with a book you may enjoy to read is enough to decompress. Going to a park where you can keep an eye on your kids and yet you can still kind of relax yourself, highly recommend it, especially if it's a beautiful day. Go out, enjoy that. Go out in the early evening when the stars come out and let your kids play under the stars within your sight and let you relax and enjoy the quiet moment that you have. I recommend that you find those moments that you can steal 2-3 times a week to decompress and and it may be after everybody's gone to bed. You watch your favorite movie, you watch your favorite Netflix, you have, a chocolate brownie. I was talking with a person I work with, and I told her, I said, this week I'm shipping you a pan of brownies.
La, 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 la.
Yeah,
I know who that person is.
You don't want to hear that? Come on,
No,
Dr.
I don't.
So,
Ship her some kale.
No, I'm not sending her kale. So, but the point is that find that synergy for you. And if you don't know what that word means, I'm not going to tell you. You got to look it up, because that's the only way to find your synergy is to understand in your words what that means. And finding synergy isn't easy. I get that. For me, decompression is me turning on my Xbox One and playing football, or it is going for a walk and sitting and just thinking, because I like to do that. It may be reading to myself where I'm quiet and I have quiet time. So that's my suggestion, Doctor. I know it sounds kind of crazy. Your faith, find comfort in your faith. Use church or synagogue or temple, whatever it is you do, use that for you to recharge your batteries. Don't be afraid to drop from the pew to your knees and pray and ask for the Lord to put his hands on you, no matter what that looks like for you. And so that's not secular, So those are my suggestions. That's what you have to do.
It's practicing intentional mindfulness.
Yes.
And, becoming one with the thing that calms you. For me, being outside when it's nice, I have a porch. And I tell you, my another positive, COVID is the reason my porch has never looked so good. And it's become a little bit of a haven for me until the mosquitoes came, unfortunately. But it's almost that weather where I can sit back out there and I have a fountain, the water. Everybody knows water, boop, that sound of water and the green and the blooming plants, and the dogs are out there being peaceful with me until the Amazon Prime guy comes. But
right.
But it's you have to, and I'll remind a lot of you that have been with us a while, we've had experts on. Go back and look at those shows. If you are at the end of your tether, this 5th, 7th week of school already, and folks, if you're already at the end of your tether and it's beginning of the school year, you have got to put it on yourself to find ways to be intentionally mindful, to save your sanity and to keep you from being a burned out parent. Burned out parents are not helpful to their kids in a lot of ways. And there can be an extreme, right? The extreme can be anywhere from doing things like just not having the energy to make sure your kid goes to school, to actually wanting to hurt them. And we do know that child abuse is up. Matter of fact, in a future show, we're going to have the Collin County Child Advocacy Center spokesman come on and talk to us about what they're seeing during this COVID period and what we can look out for there, and train us in how, as educators and as parents, how to be looking for signs of unwellness in our kids' friends, right? Our kids' parents and so forth. So we have lots of good guests coming in the future to help us manage and negotiate these waters so that we stay not only sane, because it's not enough to be sane, it's to be a positive influence to your family. And so,
and Dr. Good, if I may, for just a moment, we also have a resource list.
Yes.
That you are more than welcome to have, that has resources on it that can help you from wellness to counseling to substance abuse, adults, adolescents, food, clothes, employment, behavioral sciences for your kiddos or for you. We have resources. And you might say, well, I can't afford those. Well, a lot of them are free. And it's just a matter of you investing your time for you and your family. So if you would like one, please feel free to private message Dr. Good at Ask Dr. Be Good on Facebook, or you can message me on Facebook at JP Cathy and the Crew, or you can email me at jpcathyandthecrew3@gmail.com, and we will get you that resource list.
So thank you, Judge Peyton. We have come towards the end of our hour, and I want to remind everyone that this is the Ask Dr. Be Good show. It doesn't matter what state you're in. Just go to the Ask Dr. Be Good Facebook page. There's the email. Click right there. If you want to know about resources in whatever state, we will help you with that. If you want to know how to negotiate and manage a situation that's happened with your child's school, especially around special ed issues, a lot of districts are not doing their best work right now during this COVID period with their special populations, and parents have every right to be concerned because, as some of you have heard me say in past shows, that's the one thing the federal government did not give us a waiver on, and that is our not only treatment, but also the timelines around our special populations and their learning plans, their individual education plans. So if you think that you have cause to complain and the school is not giving you the time of day, there are words, there's statutes that we can give you and put in your hands to empower you a little bit and make you a better partner, because that's what we want. We don't want you to be the negative parent. We want you to be a positive partner with your child's school. Your child's in school for 13 plus years, and if you're only in grade 4, you want to help your school learn to be a positive force with you in the management of your child's education. So feel free. I've got the Ask Dr. Be Good app that you can download from the iTunes store. You can, like I said, email me. You can email Judge Peyton. We are here to help you manage during this crazy time that is the COVID public education time. In the meantime, as always, thank you for being on. We look forward to your comments. We look forward to having you tell us more about what you want to hear more of. And thank you for being on. And have a wonderful day.